thinking about that poll I showed you the other day that showed that many young Canadians, especially young Canadian men, are open to taking Donald Trump's banter about becoming the 51st state. I think there's both push and pull there. The pull is that America is rich and about to get richer, and Trump is a charismatic, decisive leader who is racking up wins every day. He's not emasculated. He's manly in that sense, but he's winning not just for himself, but for his entire country. I don't know if you saw it, but just yesterday, they announced they're going to turn Guantanamo Bay into a 30,000-person prison for the worst of the worst illegal migrants.
Today, I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And that's a tough place to get out of. Today's signings bring us one step closer to eradicating the scourge of migrant crime in our communities once and for all. And it was just it's just an unforced error that we even have to be doing this. Now we need Congress to provide full funding for the complete and total restoration of our sovereign borders, as well as financial support to remove record numbers of illegal aliens.
No real person disagrees with that other than some woke media. Trump is doing 10 dramatic things like that every day. It's unbelievable. He is a man of action, and he's a businessman at heart. What young man wouldn't find that inspiring? More inspiring than Trudeau's weird male feminism or Mark Carney's blathering about how we need a carbon budget or whatever buzzword he's using now to describe that how we have to pay taxes to change the weather. But somehow China doesn't. Did you see this clip?
Now, so far, carbon prices have been applied sparingly. They've been set far too low, in the single digits on average globally, well short of the estimated $80 to $100 a ton needed by the end of this decade to keep us on track to net zero.
Yeah, the carbon taxes are not really about changing the weather. It's about controlling you and enriching them, and about giving China a competitive advantage over the West. I think a lot of us see that. So the pull of joining the U.S. is that Donald Trump really is making America great again. You might not like all his plans to annex Greenland. I love that some pundits are calling it red, white, and blue land. That makes me laugh. Or that Trump insists on retaking the Panama Canal. America built it. 38,000 Americans died building it, in fact. But it's decisive and bold and action-oriented, and it's about not being pushed around anymore. I think the clearest moment was when Colombia's little socialist president refused to allow 2 flights of illegal migrants being repatriated back from America. In response, Trump just detonated Colombia, canceled 1,500 visa interviews that were scheduled, announced huge tariffs, announced a ban on anyone involved in that government and even their family members from coming to America. It was a full sanctions package. Colombia's socialist president capitulated in less than an hour. We told you about that the other day. You know that Joe Biden would have just accepted that indignity, and Kamala Harris too. Again, compare that kind of leadership to Justin Trudeau or the UK's Keir Starmer or France's Emmanuel Macron. Western civilization has been emasculated. That's why people like Jordan Peterson are successful. They're reminding men, especially young men, about the virtues and responsibilities of being manly. So that's the pull. That's the reason why people in Canada might actually want to join the U.S. But at the same time as all that pull, there's never been more push, as in Trudeau and Carney and Freeland pushing Canadians towards the U.S. Taxes. Oh, by the way, have you forgotten that the carbon tax is actually scheduled to go up again on April 1st? It just never stops. And even the so-called Conservative Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, what's his great masculine way to fight back against Trump? By borrowing billions of dollars to just sort of fire hose money at people. How is that fighting? I'm not exactly sure. How does that fix a problem? I don't know. But that's my point. Trump isn't just a masculine style. He has leadership and action. He's done stuff in his life. He's got a plan. Everyone can see it. You tell me if you understand the great conservative plan that Doug Ford is selling in this video.
We'll redouble our efforts to build Ontario's economy. We will do whatever it takes to protect workers and their livelihoods. We will invest tens of billions of dollars in new spending to keep people working. We will work with unions and businesses to retain and reskill our hardest hit workers. And as we do, we need to do everything possible to keep our economy competitive. We'll keep up the fight against the job-killing Liberal carbon tax, and we're urging the federal government to join us in cutting red tape and streamlining approvals to get big things built faster.
Yeah, Trump is winning in substance, but also aesthetics.
Okay, watch out. Wait.
I mean, that was absolutely incredible. And on the other hand, you've got this guy.
Also, what it all comes down to is creating opportunities for our citizens. People are struggling with affordability.
Who sits like that? Or maybe this woman.
You think the party is that?
Pourquoi vous faites marche arrière? Sur le gain en capital, pourquoi vous faites marche arrière sur le gain en capital? Attendez, sur le gain en capital, pourquoi vous faites marche arrière?
C'est difficile d'entendre parce que tout le monde crie. OK, alors.
Sur le gain en capital,
Okay.
pourquoi vous faites marche arrière?
Or maybe you like this guy. That's Mark Carney with Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman, Ghislaine Maxwell. It could be called unpatriotic to abandon your country for another country. That's literally the definition of the word unpatriotic. But what if the country you're in tells you not to be patriotic? What if the country you're in right now, the country you're born in, tells you not to love your homeland? That there's no purpose or essence to it, because that's actually the push. Trump and America are pulling like a giant magnet, but that sort of always happens, the brain drain to America. But what is Canada doing? I've listed some of the things before. You've heard me say it before. I mean, the narrative that we are overseeing a genocide against Indigenous people, not just historically, but in the present day too. That's what Trudeau says. That's what the former Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, this Chinese agent Beverly McLaughlin, says. That's what every land acknowledgement implicitly says. That's what anyone who says Turtle Island means. What people who call you and I settlers mean. They say Canada is not legitimate, not moral, even not legal. They say we're criminal. They say we're racist. Trudeau recently announced his so-called black justice strategy. In Canada? Canada doesn't have a major black presence during the time of slavery. Canada was the destination of the Underground Railroad, where black slaves ran away to be free. Black slavery was not an issue here. It was abolished by the British Empire in Canada long before Canada became a country. And it wasn't even a fact on the ground. There were precisely 16 black people in Toronto, according to a census, when slavery was banned in Canada. It wasn't a thing. Slavery in Canada was actually mainly one Indigenous band enslaving another. Sorry to report that to you. That's how it was. But Trudeau's black justice strategy not only enshrines different rights based on different races and privileges black Canadians, but it calls for black reparations in Canada. How? Yeah, you're trying too hard to copy the worst parts of the U.S. Democratic race huckster scheme up here. We don't have that problem. Please don't import it or manufacture it. We don't have the same history or problems as America. We have problems of our own, of course. Everyone knows that this whole Black Lives Matter thing is an American project. Everyone can see how the government pitting us against each other and paying us to hate each other, that is a woke project. That's not who we are as Canadians. And Trudeau does it on sex and on race and on religion and now on transgenderism. He's trying to pit us against each other. Our history is denigrated. Sir John A. Macdonald is stripped off our money. Any history has been stripped out of our passports, replaced by generic graphics. Not that we're even taught history anymore. And then there's that constant scolding about Canadians being something shameful. It never stops. Trudeau has never in his life apologized for something that he has done. Not once. Even when he went on the U.S. TV station to say why he was quitting, remember he hit the American circuit, he said he was going to resign as prime minister not because he did anything wrong, but because his fellow MPs were quarreling. Nothing he did, it's always the other guy. Remember this?
I think it's probably a bit of everything. I mean, right now there's a political cycle where incumbents, particularly those who steered us through COVID, I mean, Canada did extraordinarily well through COVID, better than just about every other peer, tens of thousands fewer deaths proportionately than our friends and allies around the world. Inflation hit less hard, our economy bounced back faster. It was good, but there is still a lingering frustration towards incumbents. And for me, where I lean in on is all the good things we were able to do. We've put forward policies that are going to make a difference for decades to come in Canada. And I think right now we're seeing a time in politics where emotions and social media is carrying an awful lot of weight in how people feel about things. But I'm always going to lean back on what are the substantive things that are being done? What are the substantive measures that make a big difference in people's lives? And standing up for the vulnerable, supporting people who need it, building an economy that works for the middle class. These are things that ultimately make the biggest difference in people's lives.
Oh, but Trudeau will always apologize for Canada and how racist and sexist we are. Not him, just you and me. So yeah, Trump pulls, and Trudeau and his mini-me's, Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney, they push. They're pushing people out. They're denigrating Canada. They're devaluing it. Here's the latest. Look at this story in the National Post and other places. Ryerson and McDonald schools to be renamed in Toronto. TDSB. The TDSB, the largest public school board in Canada, embarked upon a proactive review of the names of all schools under its purview. The Toronto District School Board will change the names of 3 public schools commemorating Henry Dundas, Egerton Ryerson, and Sir John A. Macdonald. Says who? By what right? This recommendation is based on the potential impact that these names may have on students and staff based on colonial history, anti-Indigenous racism, and their connection to systems of oppression, says a report from board staff. I clicked on that link and I read that semi-literate report. Here it is. You can find it pretty quickly yourself. It feels like it was written by a low IQ activist based off some Google searches. Seriously. I'm not saying I'm smarter than anyone, but even I know that Sir John A. Macdonald's last name doesn't have a capital D in it. That's not a super important thing to know. I know that's a small thing in this conversation, but if you don't know how to spell Sir John A. Macdonald, I'm going to say that you're probably not an expert in Sir John A. Macdonald. You probably just started thinking about this last week when you got some racism grant and then you went to Wikipedia or something.